I was sitting at the kitchen table, the one I'd built for my daughter's 16th birthday. She stood there, my granddaughter, Lucy, arms crossed, eyes full of something sharp. You could feel the storm building in her chest. "I don't want to live with her anymore," she said suddenly. Her mother, my daughter Mary, froze, spoon halfway to her mouth. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Lucy shot back. "You're controlling, you're selfish, and you ruin everything you touch. I wish you'd just disappear." It was so quiet after that, I could hear the old refrigerator hum like a faraway engine. Mary's hand trembled. The spoon clattered into her bowl. "Lucy," I began, but she wasn't done. "You think everyone owes you something. Grandma died because of your stress, didn't she? You made her sick with all your yelling. Grandpa only stays around because he pities you." Mary's lips parted, but no sound came out. The air thickened, heavy with disbelief. I pushed back my chair so hard it scraped across the tile. "That's enough," I said, the voice of a man who'd buried too many soft moments already. "Apologize to your mother." "No," she snapped, chin raised. "She doesn't deserve one." And that's when something in me shifted, not anger exactly, but something deeper, heavier. I saw Mary's eyes glisten, her mouth quiver, and for the first time since she was a child, she looked at me not like a daughter, but like a lost little girl. I took a long breath, stood, and said, "Then I'll take your place." Lucy blinked. "What?" "Your place," I repeated. "If you won't live under her roof, I will. You can go. But you remember this, family doesn't get replaced, it gets carried." She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. Mary sat there, silent, eyes on her bowl of untouched stew. I could hear her breathing, quick, uneven, like she was trying not to cry. "She didn't mean it," I murmured. "Yes," she whispered. "She did. I'd seen soldiers crumble slower than my daughter did that night." She buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking. "Dad," she said through her tears, "maybe she's right. Maybe I ruin everything." I walked around the table, put my hand on her shoulder, the same way I used to when she scraped her knees as a kid. "No. You're still the girl who fixed my coffee every morning before school because you thought it made me less tired. You're still the one who took care of your mother when she was too weak to walk. You don't ruin things, Mary, you hold them together until they stop fighting you." She leaned into me then, crying softly, and I realized, maybe for the first time, how hard she'd been fighting just to be heard. The porch light flickered outside. I knew Lucy was sitting in her car, waiting for someone to chase her. I didn't. Not that night. Instead, I took Mary's empty bowl, rinsed it under the tap, and said quietly, "Let me stay here for a while. You need someone to talk to who remembers who you used to be." She nodded without looking up. That night, as the house settled and the world outside went quiet, I sat alone in the living room, thinking about those words, "I wish you'd just disappear." I'd heard words like that before, from soldiers, from sons, from people who thought pain erased love. It never did. And deep down, I knew something was coming, something that would force both Mary and Lucy to learn what forgiveness really cost. The next morning, Mary's house felt like a museum of unfinished conversations. Her coffee mug sat half full on the counter, the steam long gone. The air still carried the faint echo of Lucy's shouting from the night before, that sharp, cutting teenage tone that somehow pierces deeper than any knife. I poured myself a cup and sat by the window, watching the frost melt on the porch rail. The sun was barely up, but Mary was already pacing. She'd been pacing since dawn. "She won't answer my calls," she said, holding her phone like it was something alive and dangerous. "She's read the messages. I can see the check marks, but she won't answer." "She's angry," I said. "Let her burn it out." Mary turned to me with wild eyes. "She told me to disappear, Dad. My own daughter." "You don't just burn that out." I didn't answer. Because I knew she was right. Some words didn't fade. They burrowed. They stayed. I'd said some myself, long ago, that I still wished I could take back. Around noon, I went to the porch. The yard looked smaller without Lucy's little red car parked out front. I could still see her as a child, hair in pigtails, holding a garden hose like it was a fireman's weapon, chasing the dog while Mary laughed from the steps. Those were the summers that made a man forget his age. Mary came outside with 2 mugs of tea. She didn't say a word at first. We sat there, the two of us, just letting the silence settle between us like dust on old furniture. Finally, she said, "Do you think I was too hard on her?" "You weren't hard enough," I said. "You were honest. That's harder than being cruel." She stared out across the yard. "Mom used to say that too." "She was right," I replied. "Your mother always was." We both smiled at that, but it didn't last long. The front gate creaked, and for a heartbeat, I thought Lucy had come back. But it was the mailman, dropping a few envelopes into the box before waving and heading off. Mary deflated like a balloon with a slow leak. That evening, she cooked dinner anyway, 2 plates, not 3. Old habits. Meatloaf and potatoes, the way Lucy always liked them. I watched her from my seat at the table, each movement slow, careful, as if she were afraid of making noise. When we sat down, she said quietly, "You really meant it last night. About taking her place." "I did." "Why?" I looked at her then, really looked. Her eyes were swollen, her voice hoarse, but there was something in her face that reminded me of her mother, that stubborn light that never went out, even when life had stolen almost everything else. "Because," I said slowly, "there comes a point in every family when someone has to stand between the wound and the person who caused it. You're both hurt, Mary. But you can't see it yet. So I'll hold the space until you do." Her fork clattered against the plate. "Dad, you can't fix this." "I'm not trying to fix it. I'm trying to keep it from breaking worse." We ate in silence after that. Around 9, the phone finally rang. The sound cut through the house like a blade. Mary froze mid-breath before lunging for it. "Lucy?" Her voice cracked. "Lucy, is that you?" I could only hear one side of the conversation, but it was enough. Mary's face told me everything. Relief at first, then confusion, then horror. When she finally spoke again, her voice was so small I barely recognized it. "She's been in an accident." My heart stopped. "What?" Mary's hand shook. "A car accident. Out on Route 4. They said she's alive, but—" Her voice broke completely. "She's at County General." I grabbed my coat without thinking. The drive there was a blur, the highway lights stretching into lines, the wipers slapping time against the windshield, Mary whispering prayers she hadn't said since she was a child. When we reached the hospital, a nurse led us down a hall that smelled like disinfectant and dread. Lucy was there, pale but breathing, her arm in a sling, her forehead bandaged. She looked up when we entered, saw her mother, and turned away. Mary stopped at the foot of the bed, hands trembling. "Lucy," she whispered. "I'm here, sweetheart." No response. "I was so scared." "I didn't ask you to come," Lucy muttered, eyes fixed on the window. The words hung there, colder than the snow outside. Mary's breath hitched. I saw her bite her lip, swallow the anger that tried to rise. Then she turned and walked out of the room. I stayed. Lucy didn't look at me right away. When she did, her eyes were red, rimmed with shame she was trying hard to hide. "Grandpa," she said softly, "you shouldn't have come either." I pulled the chair close and sat her down. "Then you'll just have to forgive me." She didn't smile. She didn't even blink. But I saw the tears gather in the corners of her eyes before she turned away again. "I didn't mean what I said last night," she whispered. "Yes, you did," I said. "And that's okay. The truth comes out ugly sometimes. But you're lucky. It's not too late to put it back together." She shook her head. "Mom hates me now." "No," I said gently. "Your mother doesn't hate you. She's just bleeding from a place she can't reach." Lucy looked at me then, and for a moment she was small again, The same little girl who used to crawl into my lap when thunderstorms frightened her. Her lips trembled. I don't know how to fix it. I reached out, took her uninjured hand in mine. Then I'll show you. But you have to promise me something. What? When the time comes, you'll face her. You'll tell her what you told me. Every word. Lucy nodded faintly, tears spilling down her cheeks. I didn't know then how soon that time would come, or how much both of them would have to lose before forgiveness stopped being a choice. Mary didn't come home that night. After the hospital, she'd driven off into the dark, saying nothing but, I just need to think. I knew better than to follow her. A wounded heart needs silence before it needs comfort. So I stayed with Lucy, sitting by that hospital bed long after the nurses dimmed the lights. She drifted in and out of sleep, her breathing shallow, her phone buzzing every few minutes with messages she didn't dare open. The glow of that screen flickered across her face like lightning on water. When morning came, she whispered, She's not answering my texts. She will, I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. Sometimes forgiveness starts with letting someone miss you. Lucy gave a weak laugh that wasn't really a laugh at all. Grandpa, you sound like one of those old radio preachers. Maybe I am, I said, sipping bad coffee from a paper cup. Except I don't ask for donations. Around 10, the door opened, and there stood Mary. Eyes red, hair unbrushed, hands trembling. But she was there. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Mary said quietly, You scared me half to death. Lucy looked away. I didn't mean to. You never do, Mary said. There was no anger in it, only exhaustion. She stepped closer, and for a second, I thought she might touch her daughter's hand, but she stopped short, caught between fear and love. Do you even know what you've done to me? Lucy's voice cracked. I know. No, you don't. Mary's voice rose, trembling now. You can't. You can't possibly know what it's like to love someone so much you'd die for them, and then hear them say they wish you'd disappear. Lucy started crying. The kind of crying that came from the gut, sharp, shaking, the kind that pulls the air out of a room. And Mary, she turned away, pressing her hand to her mouth like she was holding something back. I couldn't watch it anymore. I stood. That's enough, I said. They both looked at me like I'd slapped the table. Maybe I had, I don't remember, but the sound of it echoed. Both of you sit there and think you're enemies, I said, my voice trembling with something old and deep. You're not. You're reflections, stubborn, proud, terrified reflections. Mary's jaw tightened. Dad, you don't. I do, I snapped. I remember when you were Lucy's age, shouting that your mother ruined your life because she wouldn't let you move out with that fool boy from town. You said the same words, I wish you'd just disappear. You remember? Her face went pale. That's not. It is, I said softly. And your mother forgave you anyway. Do you know why? Because she knew one day you'd understand. And now you do. The room fell still. Mary sank into the chair beside Lucy's bed, her hands shaking. Lucy looked at her mother like she was seeing her for the first time. After a long pause, Lucy whispered, I didn't mean it, Mom. I was angry and stupid, and I just wanted you to hurt like I did. Mary's eyes filled. You did, she said quietly. You hurt me more than you know. I know, Lucy said. That's why I called Grandpa. They both turned toward me. I thought if anyone could fix it. Lucy went on. It'd be him. He always fixes everything. And there it was, that word again. Fix. I shook my head. No, sweetheart. I don't fix things. I just make sure people don't forget what they've broken. Mary covered her face with both hands. Lucy reached across the blanket and touched her mother's wrist. The simple act of skin against skin felt heavier than anything I'd ever witnessed. Mom, Lucy whispered, I want to come home. Mary's hand froze, then slowly, she turned it, fingers wrapping around her daughter's. Then come home. I could have left the room right then, and maybe I should have. But something in me said to stay, Because sometimes forgiveness is fragile, like glass. If you turn your back too soon, it cracks again. They talked quietly for a while after that, voices low, trembling but real. And as I sat in that stiff chair, the fluorescent lights humming above, I realized something that hit me hard. I had become the place between them. The quiet bridge. The old man standing between pride and love, holding the weight of both so neither would fall. Later that afternoon, after the paperwork and the nurse's warnings, we drove home together. Lucy sat in the back seat, staring out the window, while Mary kept both hands tight on the steering wheel. The silence was softer now, not the kind that cuts, but the kind that heals. When we got home, I went straight to the backyard, sat on that old wooden swing I'd built decades ago. The chains creaked, the air smelled of thawing soil. Mary joined me after a while, carrying 2 cups of tea. "She's sleeping," she said quietly. "I think she's ashamed." "Good," I said. "A little shame's the first step toward change. Too much, and it becomes punishment." She nodded slowly. "I don't know how to talk to her now. Everything feels fragile." "It should," I said. "Things worth keeping usually are." We sat there in the fading light. After a while, she turned to me. "Dad, what did you mean last night? When you said you'd take her place?" I stared at the sky a long time before answering. "I meant that when someone in this family crosses the line, I'll cross it with them, not to protect them, but to make sure they find their way back." Mary's eyes glistened. "And what if they don't?" "Then," I said softly, "I stay in the dark until they do." That night I heard movement upstairs, the sound of a bedroom door opening, then the soft murmur of voices. Mary and Lucy talking. No yelling this time. Just words, slow and broken and true. I sat downstairs, listening through the quiet, tears in my own eyes, thinking maybe, just maybe, the worst had passed. But I was wrong. Because a week later, something happened that proved forgiveness isn't a single act. It's a test, and ours wasn't finished yet. It started with laughter. A week had passed since the hospital, and the house was finally breathing again. Lucy had come downstairs for breakfast that morning in her pajamas, hair a mess, arms still in a sling, but with that shy grin I hadn't seen in months. Mary was cooking pancakes, real ones, from scratch, the kind her mother used to make. I sat at the table with my coffee, pretending to read the paper but really just watching them. It was the kind of morning that tricks you into thinking the world's back to normal. Lucy asked for chocolate chips. Mary teased her about her sweet tooth. For a few minutes, the sound of laughter filled the kitchen again. And I remember thinking, we made it through. But you learn, when you've lived long enough, that peace is a fragile guest. It never unpacks its bags. That afternoon, Mary got a phone call. I heard her voice shift, first calm, then tight, then sharp. She walked into the hallway, phone pressed hard to her ear. When she came back, her face was white as a sheet. "That was your school," she said, looking straight at Lucy. "Your counselor said they received an anonymous message. Someone sent them screenshots from your phone, messages about me." Lucy blinked. "What kind of messages?" Mary swallowed hard. "The kind that call me abusive, manipulative, unfit to be a mother." Silence. Then Lucy's eyes went wide. "Mom, I didn't. They said you wrote them to your friends. Screenshots with your name." Lucy's mouth opened, then closed. "Those were from weeks ago. Before the accident." "I didn't mean. Before or after doesn't matter," Mary snapped, voice trembling. "You made me look like a monster, Lucy. After everything we've been through?" The argument grew too fast to stop. "Mom, please," I was angry. "No, you were cruel," Mary shot back. "Do you know how close they were to calling child services? How that would have looked? You're 17, Lucy. They could have taken you away." Lucy's lip trembled. "Maybe they should have." And there it was, the explosion I'd felt building all week. Mary turned, her face drained of all color, and before I could step in, she said the one thing she'd regret for the rest of her life. Your grandmother would be ashamed of you." The air left the room. Lucy froze, tears spilling before she could even blink. "You don't get to say that," she whispered. "You don't get to use her like that." Then she was gone, out the door, down the porch steps, barefoot, her sling flapping loose. "Lucy!" Mary shouted, following after her, but I grabbed her arm. "Let her go," I said quietly. "You can't chase someone who's running from shame." Mary turned on me, fury in her eyes. "You think I wanted to say that? She keeps throwing knives, and I just keep catching them. She learned it from somewhere," I said. Her eyes filled. "Don't you dare make this my fault." "I'm not," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm just saying, the fire didn't start with her. It never does." She collapsed into a chair, sobbing, and I stood there in the doorway, helpless. The sound of her crying hit me harder than any fight I'd ever seen. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't know who to protect anymore. Night came. No word from Lucy. Her phone went straight to voicemail. The sheriff, an old friend of mine, said he'd send a patrol car to keep an eye out but told me not to panic yet. Mary sat on the couch, knees pulled to her chest, staring at the window like it could give her back what she'd lost. "Dad," she whispered, "what if something happens to her?" I sat beside her. "Then I'll find her. And I'll bring her home." At midnight I did what old men aren't supposed to do. I got in my truck, the same one I'd taught Mary to drive in, and I started searching. The roads were empty, the air thick with summer rain. Every streetlight looked like a ghost. I drove to the park, the one with the bench by the pond, our family's old spot. And sure enough, there she was. Sitting in the dark, knees drawn up, head buried in her good arm. I didn't say her name right away. I just sat down beside her, close enough that she could feel I was there. The rain pattered on the pond like 1,000 tiny apologies. "I thought about running away," she said after a while. "Like, really running away. Just going somewhere no one knows me." "I believe you," I said. "But then I thought, you'd probably come looking." "I would," I said. "And I'd find you." She wiped her face with her sleeve. "I hate myself for what I said. And I hate her for saying that about Grandma. And I hate that I still love her anyway. That's how you know it's real," I said softly. "If love was easy, we'd all do it right the first time." She leaned her head on my shoulder. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The frogs, the rain, the hum of the streetlight, all of it blurred together into something close to peace. Then she whispered, "Do you think she'll ever forgive me again?" I thought of Mary at home, the way her hands shook as she held her phone, replaying every mistake she'd ever made. I thought of how long it took me to forgive my own daughter, years ago, for her teenage fury. "She already has," I said. "She just doesn't know how to tell you yet." When we got back to the house, the porch light was still on. Mary stood in the doorway, arms crossed, face unreadable. Lucy froze halfway up the steps. "Mom," she said, voice small. "I'm sorry." Mary didn't move. For a second, I thought she might turn away again, until her shoulders started shaking. Then she ran down those steps and wrapped her daughter in both arms, holding her so tight I thought they'd both break. And I just stood there, watching. Because in that moment, I realized my part in this story was ending. They didn't need a bridge anymore. They were finally learning to cross the river on their own. Still, I knew, the hurt wasn't gone. It never really goes. It just changes shape. Later that night, after they'd gone upstairs, I sat at the kitchen table, that same maple table I'd built all those years ago. My fingers traced the initials carved underneath. And I thought about what forgiveness costs. It doesn't come cheap. It asks for pride first, and then time, and then a piece of the heart that never grows back the same. But sitting there, hearing their muffled laughter through the floorboards, I figured maybe it's worth the price. It was 2 weeks later when the letter arrived. No envelope, no stamp, just folded paper slipped under the front door sometime before dawn. I found it lying on the rug when I went out for the morning paper. My knees cracked as I bent to pick it up, and the moment I saw Lucy's handwriting, my stomach went cold. Don't tell Mom. I'm going away for a while. I need to think. Please don't come after me this time. I love you, Grandpa. Mary was still upstairs asleep. The house was quiet, that rare kind of quiet that feels like it's holding its breath. I stood in the doorway, looking out toward the road. The sky was gray, that in-between color of mornings that haven't decided what kind of day they want to be. I made coffee and sat at the table, the same maple table that had witnessed every wound this family ever opened. The letter lay beside the cup, edges curling in the steam. She was gone again, not out of anger this time, but guilt. And that kind of running, that kind's harder to track. When Mary came down, she saw my face and knew before I said a word. She read the letter once, twice, then pressed it to her chest like she could hold her daughter inside it. She'll come back, I said. How can you be so sure? Because she's still listening, I said. When people stop listening, they don't leave notes. She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks, and then she whispered something I hadn't expected. Dad, maybe you should have let her go the first time. Maybe we all need to stop chasing her. I stared at her. You think that's what forgiveness looks like? Giving up? She shook her head. No. Maybe forgiveness is stopping before you break yourself trying to fix what isn't ready. Those words stayed with me all day. That evening, I drove out to the old orchard on the edge of town. Lucy used to go there when she was small, a mess of crooked apple trees and tall grass, quiet enough that you could hear your own thoughts. Sure enough, her car was parked just off the dirt road. I didn't walk straight up. I just waited a while, leaning on the hood of my truck, watching the light fade. She came out from between the trees, eyes swollen from crying, a small duffel over her shoulder. I asked you not to come, she said. I didn't, I replied. You left your car where any fool could see it. I just happened to drive by. That almost got a smile out of her. She dropped the bag and sat on the tailgate, staring at the horizon. I thought if I left, she'd stop looking at me like I broke something she can't fix. You did break something, I said. So did she. That's how families work. We take turns breaking and mending each other. She looked at me then, tired, young, and older than she should have been. How do you keep forgiving people when they keep hurting you? I thought about that for a long time before answering. Because someone has to, I said quietly. Otherwise, the hurt starts breeding. It turns into something that eats through generations. My father hurt me, I hurt your mother, she hurt you. You want to stop it? Then you forgive. Not because they deserve it, because you do. Lucy didn't speak for a while. Then she whispered, I don't know how. You start small, I said. You go home. You sit down at that table and tell her what you just told me. She shook her head. What if she doesn't forgive me? Then you forgive her first. We got home after dark. Mary was waiting on the porch, still in her robe, a single porch light burning above her like a halo that had seen better days. Lucy stopped halfway up the steps. Either of them moved. I shouldn't have left, Lucy said. I just didn't know how to be around you without feeling wrong. Mary swallowed hard. I shouldn't have said what I said about your grandmother. She would have been proud of you, no matter what. And then, like it had always been meant to happen, they reached for each other. No words, just the kind of silence that fills a wound instead of widening it. I turned away then. There are moments a man shouldn't witness, moments that belong to other hearts. Later that night, we sat around the table again, the three of us. The same spot where it all began. The same wood, the same scars. Mary poured tea. Lucy picked at the grain with her fingernail. And I, old fool that I am, realized that for the first time in years, nobody was trying to win. Mary looked across at me. You took her place once, she said softly. Why? I smiled, tired but honest. Because I couldn't bear to lose both of you to the same silence. Lucy reached across the table, her small hand on mine. You didn't. You saved us. I shook my head. No. You saved each other. I just sat here long enough for the storm to pass. The clock ticked. The tea cooled. Outside, the rain began again, soft this time, forgiving. I thought of my wife then, Mary's mother, and how she used to say some families break like glass, others bend like branches. Maybe, after all this, we were finally learning to bend. Before bed, I tucked Lucy's letter into the drawer by my chair. I couldn't throw it away. Because one day, when she's grown and has a child of her own, I'll show it to her and say, "This is what it costs to love someone, everything you've got, and a little more." And maybe she'll understand what I only learned too late. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing to remember without reopening the wound. That night the house was quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't hold its breath anymore. The kind that finally lets you sleep.